Good evening. As I mentioned last night, the passage of Article 8, which is the first one we're going to be taking up tonight, is conditioned on a ballot vote. That ballot vote will take place at a state election in the fall. So Article 8 is a two-step process: passage by this town meeting, and then passage at a ballot vote in the fall. Could I have a motion under Article 8?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. I move to accept Sections 3 to 7, inclusive of Chapter 44B of the General Laws, known as the Massachusetts Community Preservation Act, by approving a surcharge on real property for the purposes permitted by said act, including the preservation or rehabilitation of historic resources, including historic buildings, artifacts, and documents, the creation and support of community housing, the acquisition of open space, such as land for the protection of public drinking water supplies, wetlands, farmland, forests, marshes, scenic areas, wildlife preserves, and other conservation areas, and the creation or rehabilitation of outdoor recreational facilities, including parks, playgrounds, and athletic fields, to approve a property tax surcharge in the amount of 1% of the taxes assessed annually on real property, which shall be dedicated to the fund. Such surcharge to be imposed on taxes assessed for fiscal years beginning on or after July 1st, 2014, and to exempt from the surcharge the following: property owned and occupied as a domicile by a person who would qualify for low-income housing or low or moderate-income senior housing in the town, as defined in Section 2 of Chapter 44B of the General Laws.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, Mr. Amoroso.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to Boxborough Town Meeting. It's one way we come together as a community, but there are many others, and we all have our favorites. For some, it's playing a game at Liberty Fields, or watching the Memorial Day Parade at historic Old Town Center, or at South Cemetery. For others, it's sledding at Steel Farm. And for many, it's my favorite, going to Pfeiffer's Day at Flora Meadows. Shared experiences like these make Boxborough a community. The Community Preservation Act, or CPA, will make it better. We can preserve our history, as well as our agricultural land and open spaces. We can gain more control over meeting the state's affordable housing mandate. And we can develop areas for outdoor recreation. Even better, Massachusetts will pay us to do it. In the last 16 years, we spent $4 million on community preservation. We paid every cent of that ourselves. But we don't have to go it alone anymore. And the less we have to spend ourselves, the more we'll save in taxes. CPA requires Massachusetts to pay matching funds every year to qualifying communities. Here's how Boxborough qualifies. We accept CPA by voting yes tonight on Articles 8 and 9, and then again at the ballot box in November. This will add a 1% surcharge to real estate tax bills starting next year. For the average home, that's about $88 a year. Folks who qualify for low-income housing or low and moderate-income senior housing are exempt. The money will go to the Boxborough Community Preservation Fund. Every year, it will also get matching funds from the state. Last year's match rate was over 52%. The Boxborough Community Preservation Committee will recommend projects for the fund to support, but it's not their money. It's yours. And every year at town meeting, you will vote and decide how to spend your money. You set the surcharge you want. as low as you like, but no higher than 3%. You can change it at any time, and you don't have to spend it every year. You can set aside some or all of it for future years. You decide what to spend for each community preservation purpose, so long as they get at least 10% apiece. You can revoke CPA after 5 years, and if you do, the money is still yours, and you can take as long as you like to spend it on community preservation. 155 communities have accepted CPA. Only 3 of them even considered revoking it, and all 3 voted to keep it in a landslide. Why is that? Free money, that's why. Since 2002, CPA communities have raised $1.2 billion. By the end of this year, they will have gotten more than $500 million in matching funds. We'll still be empty-handed. This is a map of our little corner of Massachusetts. The towns in green have accepted CPA. Every town that touches Boxborough is green. That's why they call us the hole in the donut. But what we really are is an empty pocket in a sea of green. And what's worse, some of their green came from your pocket. Littleton, Harvard, Stowe, and Acton got $9.5 million in state matching funds. And some of that money came from you. So if you've ever been to Springfest at Stowe Community Park, ridden your bike on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, or taken a walk around Narrow Park in Acton, I hope you enjoyed visiting your money. But you shouldn't have to leave town to do it. And tonight we can correct the costly mistake we made in 2001 when we missed the boat on CPA. So why not accept it? Well, one argument says you can't trust the state to pay, and it's uncertain how much you'll get. And that was a real concern back in 2001. But since then, the state has paid every year as the law requires. Last year's match rate was over 52%. This year should be about the same. And total distributions by the end of this year will top $500 million. Another argument says you shouldn't collect money before you decide how to spend it, even if you make a 52% profit. I doubt that's a lesson you'd teach to your kids. But the argument says the money will burn a hole in your pocket, like a prepaid health account that has you scrambling to spend money before it disappears at the end of the year. Except CPA money won't disappear. If you don't spend it now, you can spend it later when you need it. What the argument really boils down to is this. Since the money is already, quote, in the bank, you'll just be itching to spend it. In other words, you can't be trusted to spend your own money wisely. We think you can. Another objection is that the state doesn't count the surcharge towards the Prop 2.5 limit. But there's a good reason for that. Taxes that do count don't bring matching funds. CPA does. It's an investment that pays you back. And you can use the matching funds to buy what you need. And that will increase the purchasing power of your tax dollars and help keep taxes lower. That's why every community that voted to accept it kept it. CPA can and will work for Boxborough, just as it works for them. More fundamentally, this argument ignores the fact that both Prop 2.5 and CPA are financial tools that you control by a simple majority vote. If you want to stay below the 2.5% cap, CPA won't stop you. You can vote for a smaller budget. You can lower the surcharge, or you can do both. With a simple majority vote, you control what your tax rate will be. And you'll have even more control with CPA, because you'll also have matching funds from the state to work with. Prop 2.5 is meant to keep taxes down. It would defeat its very purpose to deprive you of those matching funds for fear you won't make smart choices. This is yet another argument that says you can't be trusted to spend your own money wisely. Again, We think you can. Last is the argument that we won't have a steady stream of qualifying projects you'll want to support. That Boxborough doesn't have enough need for free state money to benefit from CPA. But our history shows that we do. To determine our long-term need, we looked at warrants for the last 16 years. During that time, we spent almost $4 million on community preservation and averaged almost $247,000 a year. We paid 100% of that ourselves, but there's a better way. A 1% surcharge would raise 2/3 of that $247,000. At last year's 52% match rate, the state would pay the other third. We could meet our historical average spending needs and pay 1/3 less. And the less we pay for what we need, the more we'll save in taxes. Here's how that works. This year's warrant has almost $171,000 in spending that would qualify for CPA matching funds. If you vote tonight to accept CPA, the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom have agreed to join together and recommend that you defer as much of that spending as possible until next year. That would allow us to pay for those projects out of community preservation funds next year when we will be eligible for state matching funds. At last year's match rate of 52%, we would get almost $85,000 in state funds that we could use to help pay for those projects. And that would allow us to reduce the overall tax levy, yielding a lower tax rate. So unless you want to continue to pay 100% yourselves and get no matching funds, vote for CPA. Unless you don't mind that Acton, Littleton, Harvard, and Stowe got $9.5 million while you got nothing, vote for CPA. And unless you want your taxes to boost their property values year after year, vote for CPA. Thank you.